Last week we made king cake. If you haven't seen that video, go back and watch it. We made a very traditional New Orleans Mardi Gras dessert. This week we are making something completely different. We are going to make a tri-colored layer cake with yellow cake, ube cake, and pandan cake. All three of those making the colors of Mardi Gras. So something very different, but one that I'm really excited to make. So let's get into it. Also, I'm a little bit sick today, so if you hear me sniffling or breathing through my nose, now you know. We're actually starting off at the stove because we're going to make the beginnings of our cake frosting. So I have 397 grams of sugar. The reason for that funny number is because I'm translating ounces into grams. 454 grams of flour. I'm going to take my whisk and I'm going to whisk it together in the pot. We are making Ermine cake frosting, which is a French-style cake frosting, very appropriate for New Orleans. It's going to be very fluffy and it's going to be less sweet than most other cake frostings. With that in place, I'm going to turn the heat on. We're going to put it on medium. We need to whisk the flour and sugar continuously over the course of the next 2 to 3 minutes while the flour toasts. After 2 minutes and after you've made a mess on your stove, we're going to take 2 cups of milk and we're going to slowly pour this into our mixture while we whisk. And hopefully my pot doesn't move too much as I continue to pour. Say that's good. I'm going to use my spatula here to get into the edges of the pot where I know some flour and sugar has been gathering. And you know what? I think my stove is doing this a little bit faster than the recipe I found online. So I'm going to turn the heat down to medium-low. All the milk has been added to the pot. Now we whisk until things come to a simmer. It's definitely starting to thicken at this point. This is what we're looking for right here. It should be thick. Take a heat-proof bowl and pour the mixture into it. And I'm looking for lumps and any bits of burnt sugar that have formed like candy. I don't see any. Take a layer of plastic wrap, put it over the bowl. However, instead of putting it around the top, you actually want to sink the plastic wrap down on top, directly on top of the sugar, flour, milk mixture, because this is going to freeze overnight and cool down completely. If we don't have the plastic on top, however, it's gonna form a skin, and we don't want that. And just like with every recipe that I make, I'm gonna come back tomorrow. We'll see you then. It is the next day. Let's talk about pandan. So I have 10 pandan leaves. I got this at the Asian grocery store near me, and I have my blender. And I'm just gonna roughly chop these up in the blender. All right, we're full up. Now, half a cup of water goes inside. I'm gonna scrape down the sides a little bit. I have a strainer, I have a bowl. Pour the mixture through the strainer. I use the spoon to really push down and squeeze all that liquid out of those leaf pieces. What we should be left with is a pretty dry looking paste. And what we should be left with at the end is this very green, sweet smelling liquid. I have in front of me 3 mixing bowls, each filled with 135 grams of flour. We need to create a base of dry ingredients for all 3 cakes so that at the end, all of them hopefully have the same consistency when they come out of the oven. So, to each cake, we are gonna add a half cup of flour, then a tablespoon of cornstarch, a teaspoon of baking powder, and this is one of the few times where I'm actually gonna measure the salt, a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. With that complete, we whisk each of our bowls to incorporate everything. At this point forward, all 3 of these bowls are going to deviate in wet ingredients, and we are gonna be eyeballing and freeballing a lot. This is our yellow cake. To our yellow cake, I'm gonna add 2 egg yolks and 1 whole egg. Wash your hands, wipe your surfaces. Bird flu is out there. It is. And I wish we had more info about it. You know what I'm saying. Then I'm gonna add 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, a half tablespoon of vanilla extract, 1/2 cup of buttermilk, and then a 1/4 cup of room temperature butter. Think like with any good cake batter, we don't want to over mix it. Okay, no, that's coming together pretty well. However, I want to stop. I debated whether or not I was going to do this, but I want to boost the yellow color of the cake. In fact, I'm going to be color boosting all of the cakes. So to this cake, I'm going to add 1/8 of a teaspoon of turmeric. Enough to give it a color boost, but hopefully not too much so that the flavor is altered. Okay, I'm going to call it there. All right, I have my batter. I'm going to try and do the frying pan test, where I take some of the batter and I put it on my cast iron skillet and I cook this and I see if I need to adjust my batter. Taste test says that this one is good, so we are done with that batter. Let's put that off to the side. To this mixture, we're gonna add 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 3 tablespoons of ube halaya jam that I might have to knock against the bowl to get out, a 1/2 teaspoon of ube flavoring, and then a 1/2 cup of coconut milk. All right, let's go. All right, this cake came together quite quick. However, it is thin, so we need more flour. I'm gonna add what is probably about a 1/4 cup of flour. I think it's still a little bit too thin. Gonna add what's maybe 1/8 of a cup. While the consistency is now close to what I'm looking for, I do need to give it the frying pan test. So, just gonna put some on there in a stringy mass. All right, taste-wise, this is pretty good. However, it didn't quite puff up as much as the yellow cake, so I'm gonna add another 1/2 teaspoon of baking powder. Stir that in, and we can call this one done. All right, last one. I am absolutely positive that this one is going to need more flour based upon what happened with the ube cake. So I am gonna add another 2/3 of a cup of flour. I'm also gonna add in the other 1/2 tablespoon of baking powder. We'll give that a rough mix, then add in same thing as before. 2 whole eggs and 1 egg yolk, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, 1/2 cup coconut milk. I'm gonna say that we add a 1/4 of a cup of our squeezed ube extract, but I am also, Pandan, what am I saying? Pandan extract. God, nobody come at me in the comments, all right? My brain is a bit scrambled right now. I'm making 3 different cakes. A 1/4 cup of our Pandan extract, and then we are also gonna add, oh, this one is thick. Oh, this boy be thick. All right, cool. A 1/2 teaspoon of Pandan flavoring. Our ube batter didn't need to be color boosted at the end of the day. Let's see if that's the same case with this one. This one, I definitely think we need to color boost. 3 blue food coloring drops, 6 green food coloring drops. There we go. Tell you what I'm gonna do. 1 more blue food coloring drop, just to give it a little bit of a darker hue. I think that consistency is maybe a little bit thin. Ugh, and I'm out of measuring cups. I've used them all for all these other things. I got all this other flavor in there, so I'm just gonna sprinkle in what's probably like 1/8 of a cup of flour. That looks good. Frying pan test. That's good enough. Frying pan test is good. All right, let's clear this area out. We gotta pour these. Okay, we have 3 cake pans, and we are gonna be using cake strips to try to get an even surface on top. Each of these batters have their own weight and their own volume, and probably they're all gonna puff up differently. So getting them all to be equal might be a bit of a challenge, but we are gonna do our best. So let us fill each pan with our batter. All right, y'all, 3 cakes, 3 layers. Now they all go into the oven at 350 until they're done. All right, let's look at our results. So out of our 3 cakes, our ube cake has actually risen the highest. Our pandan cake domed and split, which is a little bit of a shame, but we're gonna seal it up with frosting anyway. Our yellow cake is the shortest, but relatively uniform, and I might try to cut some of these down to size so that they are equal layers, but I also might not, because as I said before, imperfect food is beautiful food. We let these sit for a couple of minutes to cool down in their pans, and then after that, we invert them, take the cakes out, and let them cool completely on the wire racks. Let's finish up our frosting, yeah? So I have 4 sticks. Let me get a good angle of this. 4 sticks of softened room temperature butter, and I wanna make a very good point about this. If you have cold butter and you wanna warm it up quickly in the microwave, when you do this, be careful that you do not melt too much of it. You need it to be solid. If it's melted, it won't whip. So we're gonna get all 4 of these sticks into this mixer with my rice paddle because my spatula is in the dishwasher. And then you wanna set your mixer on high. This thing is gonna be moving so fast, my table is gonna be wobbling around like someone's doing something dirty on it. So let's go. And we'll run it on high for 2 minutes. Now we come back to our mixture from yesterday. On a medium-high setting, around right there, we are gonna slowly, 1 spoonful at a time, add our mixture from yesterday into the mixing bowl. You know what? I'm actually gonna take a quick break, and I'm gonna just quickly scrape the sides of the bowl real quick. Okay, there we go. Back at it. With all of our mixture added, I'm gonna lower the bowl again. I'm gonna use my paddle to push everything down off the walls. And then I'm gonna add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt that I will eyeball for this one. Raise the bowl back up, get it whipping again. And then after 1 minute, go ahead and stop, scrape the walls. Except this time, I'm also gonna change the attachment that I'm about to use. So, using my paddle, I'm also gonna try to scrape off the whipping attachment. We put the paddle attachment in place of the whipping attachment. If I can fight through this frosting, there we go. And this time we set it to go on a low speed for 10 minutes. Now we wait. Okay, we are done. Let's try it. Very good. Very creamy. Very light, sweet, but not too sweet. Let's take a look at some cakes. So, the yellow cake is, in fact, shorter than the other 2, and I think that's because of the extra baking powder that I added to these. That might have been entirely a mistake, or I should have only added half of what I added. Either way, the green and the yellow are not that different in height, but the ube is actually quite a bit taller in height, so with this one, I will be trimming this down. If I can very carefully use my chef's knife. Cutting downwards would make this cake layer look really messed up. So I'm cutting upwards. I'm almost there. I gotta make sure I don't cut my hand. That I'm gonna have to settle for. Okay, let's talk about assembling. Our pandan cake has this giant crack running down it, which means it's the most structurally unstable out of the 3. So I'm gonna make that the bottom layer. Our yellow cake, since it's still the thinnest of all 3, will go in the middle, and our newly trimmed ube cake will be on top, and that should give us some good symmetry. So there you go, that's what it'll look like. Now, let me actually take these back off because this is the part where I have to start assembling the cake together using my sugar-filled mortar here. Lay down a 1/4 inch thick of frosting between each layer. That right there, that's the best I can do. Let's go ahead and put the yellow one on top. Okay, yellow layer done. Ube layer. And like with most things, it's usually the last part of the process where I finally start to learn how to do it right, where everything kind of clicks in place, like the fact that I'm learning that you need to apply a little bit of pressure as you spread the icing around to get a nice, even, flat coating. Top layer's done. Let's get the sides sealed up. I wish I had one of those spinning cake thingies, but I don't have one, and I don't want to buy one, so we're gonna make do. 20 minutes of work and a strained lower back later, I have covered the cake in icing, and I have done my best to hide as much of the color behind a good layer of icing. I want the cut in to be kind of a reveal, even though I already know what's there. So, let's finally get to my favorite part. I believe I can take this cake to a birthday party, so I can't have a big slice, but I'll have a smallish one. And let's get a good look at that cross section. You can't really see it on this camera, but I'm gonna use my phone. That's our cross section. That's what it looks like inside the cake. Looks like the second layer needed a little bit more frosting, but that looks pretty good. We got 3 distinct colors. They're all coming through. Let's try each layer individually. This is pandan. Pretty good chew. Really good flavor. Wow. All right. This is yellow. Very southern. Very creamy. Very buttery. All right, last one. Ube. Good ube flavor. It's a little bit spongier than the other 3 layers. And in fact, I would say all 3 of these cake layers are actually kind of dense and a little bit thick. Maybe that's some adjustment I gotta make in the future to get something that's a little bit more light and airy. Overall, this came out pretty good. Now let's see if I can actually try all 3 colors together. There you go. You can see all 3 colors together. I mean, it's great. You can still taste each individual layer of cake even if you eat all 3 at the same time. They don't mix together. They all just stay separate. And so you just taste them all in different areas of your mouth. This has been a great success. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all got inspired to try something like this for yourself. If you're a more experienced baker, please give me some tips. I don't do this very often. I don't bake very often. All of this was very, very new to me and somehow, didn't turn out a disaster. So if you got tips, leave them down below. But until we see each other again, go cook something. Until we see each other again, go cook something amazing, and I will see you next time.